Chris Vermeulen from the Technical Traders.com is back again to help us get a handle on short-term probabilities for precious metals and the US dollar. This and more on this week's episode of Metal Money. I'm your host, Patrick Vieira. Chris Vermeulen from the Technical Traders.com. Welcome back to Metal Money. How are you doing?
I'm great, Patrick. How are you?
Doing good. Doing great. Chris, last time we spoke back in mid-January of this year, 2022, you touched on how silver was still basing and short-term needed to get past that 2350 area. Silver has done that. It's moved to the 2450, 2650 range. Should we still be concerned about a 22 or sub-22 short-term level, or has silver found new support levels, or at least what are the possibilities of silver revisiting 22?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we're going to see silver back at 22. I think the momentum shift has really turned to the upside. The charts are pretty bullish. Silver's had a very strong run from very early February. We've broken two really significant standout highs on the chart, which more or less, if we can break through two resistance areas on the chart, typically that means we've got very strong upward momentum. We've done that. And now silver's pulling back. So it's just started what looks to be a new trend. And it's pulling back, and the pullback is usually one of the best opportunities to get into a new trend. So I think this is a prime example. It might drop back down to 24, maybe 2350, but at this point, the momentum is still very strong, and I think it's going to want to go quite a bit higher from here. So I don't think 22 is really back in the cards unless we have some stock market meltdown that panic selling creates, is going to create panic selling in precious metals and pull them down with it. So I don't see it really happening.
Yeah, it's a good point because silver, it has been pretty resilient as of late. I mean, we've seen days where it may have fallen a dollar or more for a couple of days, and then usually within the week, it's back to where it was. And so I was meaning to ask you, you mentioned momentum, but from a technical analysis perspective, how would you read this? I mean, how would you read a 1 to 2 day price fall and then within a week it's back to where it was?
Right. So recently, really since the last few trading sessions of February, we had, the official war start, and that created a huge rally in silver, and it sold off by the end of the day. And then a couple days later, we saw another big rally and then a pullback, and it rallied up to 2750 and then pulled back sharply. So we're seeing these big rallies and sell-offs, and that's just because we're in this news-driven market right now where people are kind of flooding, moving into the same trade at the same time, and then suddenly the markets are very efficient. Everybody will push the price one way, but if it gets pushed too far too quickly, you'll see value hunters kind of step back in and they'll sell into that profit, into that gain, and then when it drops too far, there's going to be value hunters kind of moving in and accumulating again. So this volatility really is more so because we're in a news-driven market at this point. But we do see silver recover very nicely. Yeah, so silver looks like it's got a very strong bull flag pattern here. I think it's going to want to go a lot higher, and it's a good sign when we see these sharp drops. Because keep in mind, in a bull market, in an uptrend, some of the sharpest 1 or 2 day pullbacks happen during an uptrend. And it's the opposite in a falling market. When silver or stocks are falling, you get some of the strongest 1 or 2 day rallies in a falling market. So these sharp pullbacks, it's like a bull trying to buck you off before it goes higher. So sharp pullbacks in an uptrend are okay to a certain extent.
Chris, with gold, we saw it touch 2070 about a week ago or so, and it looks to be hitting some resistance around the $1940 level. When you look at your charts and analyze the candlesticks, the trends for gold, what are you seeing short to midterm for gold?
So short to midterm for gold, silver, in miners across the board is we're kind of in a cautionary phase right now. It's had a very strong pullback simply because everyone piled into precious metals at the same time based on news. And what goes straight up usually comes straight back down, and that's what we've seen. So now the market is just trying to digest. I think gold, silver, and miners could trade sideways, maybe a little bit lower over the next week or so, but I do think they have started a new bull market. And I think this is just a pullback. I think eventually we're going to go a whole lot higher. So over the next week or two, we might not see a lot of upside price action. It might be more sideways chop, maybe a little bit lower to try and scare out the weak positions. But I do think it's going to recover, and we're going to see it push up to multi-year highs here soon.
Chris, the infamous cup and handle pattern for gold, it looks like the cup pattern is complete where the right side is actually even a little bit higher than the left side. But what about the handle? Well, some people think the handle may take 2 to 3 years to complete, but looking at it, it looks like it's starting to flirt with completion. So I wanted to ask you, how do you read the handle? Is it getting near completion or do we still have some more time on it?
Yeah, it's looking fairly balanced. I mean, when you look at the size of this previous topping phase, it kind of counters the size of this handle phase. But keep in mind, this is a quarterly chart, so every candle here is 3 months, and I could see that potentially we see another, 1, 2, 3. For all we know, there could be another 3 or 4 more candles in here, which is another year before it goes up, and that size kind of handle would actually still be very well weighted to where it is. I mean, we've seen price try to run up and break through the highs that we saw back in 2020. We got very close to hitting those highs on the continuous contract. I think overseas we ended up seeing gold hit all-time highs. But there is potential that this could still take up to another year based on this pattern. Now, with that said, we at this point on a quarterly basis, we are kind of breaking out. If gold can hold up above these upper bodies from early in 2020 and close there on a quarterly basis, I think gold is going to start working its way higher and keep going up. So you could argue both. I mean, we could very easily see gold trade sideways in this handle for another year. I think that would be a very balanced pattern. But we also have the momentum in a kind of a perfect storm setup where I think if it can get some traction and start to break here, there's going to be a lot of people piling into gold, a lot of countries moving into gold as a safety play. And I think it's going to spark that next big rally, probably to 26 or 2,700 for gold. So really, I mean, you can only forecast so much. Really, the key here is to just follow price. Right now on a daily chart, it's in an uptrend. On the quarterly chart, it is on the verge of breaking out and starting a big trend. And if this quarterly cup and handle pattern breaks to the upside, we're looking at potentially a year to 2 years of upside price in gold, maybe even longer. So there's some pretty exciting price action unfolding, but we got to wait kind of one day at a time, let it unfold, confirm breakouts. Depending if you're a short-term trader or long-term investor, you just have to play those patterns.
Okay, and with gold making that move, are you looking at silver catching a ride with it?
I do. Silver, when you look at silver on the quarterly chart, it has a very bullish pattern as well. It's had a strong rally. It's been flagging sideways. And based on the size of this flag and the rally that silver had on the quarterly chart, really it's time for silver to rally. If it takes much longer, this pattern will kind of become actually very weak. So if this is a true pattern, we need to see silver start to break and run. If silver breaks and runs, we're going to see the rest of the precious metals market too. I find gold actually usually goes first, silver follows. So that'll be a pretty good leading indicator as to what silver will do is follow gold, and then silver plays catch up right after and usually outperforms gold.
Hey, Chris, I wanted to ask you about the US dollar. With volatile oil prices that we're seeing, Russia being closed out of the SWIFT system, inflation still running pretty hot, and now China with lockdowns, which is sure to emphasize supply chain kinks, maybe even failures, and of course, Powell's token rate hike. Where do you see the US dollar going on the DXY short term?
I think the dollar will end up trying to go higher. I think there's still going to be lots of global fear. The dollar seems to be a safe haven play. And I think we're going to see the dollar continue to stay firm. And I think we're going to see precious metals hold up as well. So I really think it's a strong currency that you want to own at this point. I mean, until proven otherwise, it is in a strong uptrend. It could very easily explode and become a very powerful currency, which goes against what most people think, but that's what the markets tend to do. They do what you least expect, right? So you never know how it's going to go. That's the nice thing about technical analysis is you can spot it, you can follow trends, you start on the shorter term time frames, you can see momentum shifting and shorter term trends. Eventually, the bigger trends kick in. So at this point, the US dollar I still think has a little bit more upside to go before it hits some major resistance from back in 2020. And then from there, we have to see if it finds resistance or if it starts to break out and run even higher. But I'm bullish on the dollar still.
Does the news of Saudi Arabia and China perhaps fixing oil in yuan, does that change any outlook for the US dollar?
Potentially. I don't follow it too closely, but I think if we see high oil prices, I think that will help a different currency. I think it could help the Canadian dollar fairly well because the Canadian dollar tends to move very closely to oil. I mean, the more chaos there is, China, all these things coming into play, typically that is going to be bullish for oil. And I think oil will hold up. And I also think it'll be bullish for the US dollar. So, I mean, the more uncertainty we have, I think the stronger oil and gold prices we will see. And I also think the stronger the dollar. So to me, those are kind of the place where money is going to naturally want to flow and go to be protected. If a lot of other country stocks are falling and currencies are falling, people are naturally are going to want to go to the assets that are gaining value, right? Which I think will be the U.S. stock market, the U.S. dollar, commodities. So those are the plays at this point, I think, going forward.
Chris Vermeulen from the technicaltraders.com. We thank you for your time and analysis, and we're looking forward to seeing how all of this unfolds. Hope we can do it again soon.
Thanks, Patrick. Take care.
That was Chris Vermeulen from the technicaltraders.com sharing the probabilities for both physical and fiat from a technical trader's point of view. As always, please leave your thoughts in the comment section below and remember to keep it liquid, keep it real, and I'll see you on the next episode of Metal Money.